than that, I'll recap is also going live right when we are. Aw. It's like we're codependent.
I miss you.
All right, and we are live on Twitch. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Overwatch League Network, the podcast with Deadeye on all the latest Overwatch League news, information, and esports analysis. I am your host, Emily Drunk, and tonight on episode number 75, we'll be discussing the latest in Overwatch League news, Mayhem's decision to abandon a mixed roster. We got a little bit of a trade Rudy going on between the Boston Uprising and Dallas Fuel. Shipping note out of Boston. We have our Stage 1 Week 1 recap and so much more. But before we can get into the news and introduce you to my co-host, I just want to take a moment to thank everyone who is hanging out with us live tonight on Twitch. And of course, thank all of our repeat listeners out there. As you can see, we are without Spider. He's got, a little bit of an anniversary thing going on last week and this week. But joining me tonight is my co-host, my hashtag soulmate Slambo. And Slambo, what a crazy start to Stage 2. There's been a lot of movement last minute, a lot of kind of questionable decisions to varying degrees. But how has this past week been treating you, brother?
What's up, nerd? Oh my gosh, Totem. There's been a lot going on in my life the past week. All sorts of things that are interesting and not interesting. But in regards to Overwatch, it was a really surprisingly good week. I think last week on the show, I was the one who was kind of saying that there was no like major day on the schedule that jumped out. Like, of course, there were intermittent matches that were interesting, but there was no like day that, oh my God, look at that barn, blockbuster from start to finish. But this week ended up churning out a lot of really good matches. So was absolutely happy to see that. I feel like is it crazy that we've seen such a kind of a shakeup in the league, not just with the trades, but due to the kind of evolving meta or this experimental meta that we're kind of in right now. We're kind of in flux, as we said last week. And I don't know, it's just a ton going on, a lot to talk about, a lot of movement, a lot of shuffle, a lot of fun. We just better get right to the show, otherwise we will never get done, sir.
All right, well, let's go ahead and get down to business. So, for starters, we did have a retirement announcement from none other than Dallas Fuel DPS player Effect. So, the retirement bug has struck not once, not twice, but thrice in the past week since our last show. So, following in Atlanta Reigns, DeFran, and also Toronto Defiance Stellar footsteps is Effect. And Effect did this primarily due to the state of his mental health, something that he has spoken about really at great length here in the past. He's been very open about that. And he made a couple of comments where he would go on to explain that being a star in the game just didn't motivate him anymore. And this comes after, kind of a roller coaster for him. He had come out publicly as bisexual over the summer break. It was kind of like discussing the trials and tribulations that kind of went along with that ever since he did that. And it seems like for now his plan is he's going to be producing like YouTube content. He's going to continue to stream in order to help support himself. And I do know that Dallas Fuel's Hastro, which is the team owner, we want to comment about Effect's retirement, saying that this is someone that gave the organization and fans thrilling memories, insane plays, multiple championships, and has been a true pleasure to watch. And it's a bittersweet because we got to see Effect basically have this very big emotional moment over the summer break when he did come out. And then it seems like we never quite got to see too much of that side, like post-happiness, so to speak, from Effect, just because, he only played a couple of games and a little bit rough of a go, and then Dallas Fuel made a couple of roster swaps in regards to the starting rotation, and then we never got to see Effect at that point. But when you look back at Effect's career, probably one of the key memories that I have was when Dallas Fuel had faced Shanghai last year, and the desk all picked Shanghai Dragons to win that match, and then Effect basically is just like, oh, it's going to be like that, huh? And then he just instinctively took over the entirety of that series just on his back. And it was just one of those moments that is really hard to duplicate, having such a one-sided affair behind the back of one person.
Yeah, but I think that what you're highlighting there is one side of effect, and then the other side of effect is kind of the mental health issues that he's been dealing with, and the depression and the tilt and the anxiety and the expectations and the narrative he puts in his head. So, when you get those brilliant moments, and there are things that, he's done in his career that are absolutely impressive. He made a name for himself like that. There's plenty of DPS players that have been in the Overwatch League scene or Overwatch scene since the inception, since the creation of this all, but few have stood out like affected in moments, to your point, moments of brilliance, certainly. Now, I really just feel like this move is the best for everyone. I'm completely on board with this decision. Nothing else. No X's and O's, no strategy, no tactics, no better for the roster, worse for the roster. This is better for effect. He'll be able to maybe slow things down a little bit, be able to tell a little bit more of his own story, connect with his audience better, not be so tied up in all the, obligations you have of being a professional Overwatch player. So I don't know. I'm really just trying to, focus again on the long-term benefit for him as a human. I wish Effect the best, and certainly we'll try to check out whatever content he partakes in. And thank you for all that you've done for us and all the awesome plays of the game that you gave us, Effect. And we will wish you on your merry way, sir.
And that is just one of really many things that kind of happened over the past week. So Florida Mayhem had posted something on their Overwatch League website. It was either the day that Stage 2 started or the day prior. I can't remember which exactly off the top of my head. But Mayhem basically went at length saying that, after another consecutive rough stage, that the organization opted to make some changes in regards to a restructure, which started from the top. So Florida Mayhem announced the departures of head coach Mineral, as well as their assistant coach, And the team is also looking to move their 3 Western players, so that would be Tavik, Apply, and McGravy, as well as one of their assistant coaches, Promise, to new teams. Now, that would mean that Florida is looking to move towards a roster and coaching staff that is entirely Korean. Which, if you look back, you look at their CEO from Ben Spoont, who last September basically tweeted out, we are not going to be fielding an entirely Korean roster. But then fast forward, here we are, and regardless of what type of roster Florida Mayhem are running, they have not had the best results in the Overwatch League since the inaugural season. And they obviously made some changes, and it resulted in not the best week. Pretty similar results to what we're kind of accustomed to with Florida Mayhem. But there were a lot of takeaways from Florida Mayhem this week that kind of looks like very early on, this is a step in the right direction. Now, with Mineral, this was the team's first head coach. He was really the only coach with the franchise when they first entered Overwatch League. And that was really one of our big points initially with Florida Mayhem, was just the size of the roster and also the size of the coaching staff. They were basically a team that was working with the bare minimum. So what does that mean right now? Who are the Florida Mayhem bringing on? Well, they have turned to Team Stormquake head coach Insight. And he worked with Stormquake in Contenders Korea 2018 in Season 3, where he had coached Stormquake into the playoffs. And if you're a fan of old school Overwatch, you've probably heard of a certain, main tank Kaiser, who was really a standout for that team during their run. And then this year, he's been working with O2 Blast, which are the sister team of Ardiant, or O2 Ardiant, depending on what they're going under now. I'm pretty sure it's just Ardiant, and they dropped that entirely. But anyways, Lambo, you have a full Korean roster now for the Mayhem, and there's been a lot of talk about, is this the right move for Florida Mayhem? why are Florida Mayhem the only team that has had a mixed roster that haven't quite had the results? And it seems to be the major thing that people are pulling from. And then there's a lot of talk on Twitter about this between certain general managers and whatnot that was definitely blown out of proportion. But I want to get your take on it. Do you feel like Mayhem's problem were revolving around the fact that they didn't have enough of a Korean presence, or was it something deeper than that?
Both and? Is that an option?
Mm-hmm.
What I mean by that is I think that there were signs that this organization was run a lot differently than some of the Overwatch League organizations early on. I mean, there were some jokes and some memes that came about who's driving the van or the bus. I know that there's a different team that kind of has the moniker of being somewhat the cheapskates this season. But I just said there's been signs that organization doesn't give as much support to the individuals on the team that other organizations do. I don't think that's unfair to say, right? I mean, that's just from what we've collected. So certainly they're probably not making the most out of what they have because they're maybe not watering that plant or giving it enough attention. To that end, I also feel like, yeah, I mean, maybe if they were going to go this direction and go with a more like Korean heavy roster, they should have just done it a long time ago. It was almost like you're just sticking to your first round pick because they're your first round pick, not because they're playing well. So I don't know. And I have no problem with like any of the teams making a transition to a completely Korean roster. In fact, I think communication is one of the most important factors for Overwatch League. And if you do have a language barrier and you have to work through that, that just kind of makes every change and iteration you make that much slower. Okay. And the last thing I'll say is the only reason we're talking about this whole transition to Korean is because what you said earlier, because someone came out, spoke up, and said something that very much was to the contrary of they were going to go the route of Korean roster. And now they are. That's why I think we're talking about it. That's why it's a big deal. If we would have just been a little bit more patient and contrite and just waited to see, never said never, per se, then I don't think we would have cared as much. We would have just been more talking about the individual players, not necessarily like this drama and this underlying current of saying, I think that the Mayhem is learning a lot as an organization about how to support a team, but there were signs in the past that they're not ready yet.
What I do know is, Slambo, this is absolutely great news for Saya player who, didn't really get to see any play in stage 1. So on that front, I was so enthusiastic about this move. I will say, like, the timing aspect of it was a little bit suspect, kind of like dropping it very last minute after all these other roster moves that happened. But you also kind of don't want to just continue to pile things on consecutively when there was just a slew of announcements basically the day after April 1st, just because no one was going to take anything on April 1st, with a grain of, more than a grain of salt. So, it's just a way of timing, and it is what it is. But I will say Florida Mayhem, despite what the record may say so far in stage 2, they did look a lot cleaner in regards to their communication and the team execution. But it's still very early on. But who knows? This might be a tread in the right direction for them. But this was just one of many changes that happened over the past week. There was a lot of action going on, a lot of movement. With the first few days of the month really having like close to a dozen different moves in the Overwatch League, a very huge number. And I'm surprised we didn't hear more sooner. But again, April Fool's Day was there. That happened. That was the fade. And of course, the community definitely got in on that with fake trades, sign-ins, all of that good stuff. But let's talk about what actually did happen. So there were a slew of coach changes. There were a couple new sign-ins. There was a trade. So let's start with the big one. We had a trade between the Boston Uprising and the Dallas Fuel, which essentially had the teams trade their off-tank players. So Boston Uprising sent Note over to Dallas Fuel in exchange for RCK. Now, I know with any sort of trade, there's always going to be a lot of knee-jerk reactions. And right now, it's kind of hard to really gauge where both of the teams are, considering that one of these teams, that being Dallas Fuel, actually had an off week, so we didn't get to see Note play with the Fuel this past week, but we did get to see RCK for Boston Uprising, which turned out to be absolutely massive in clutch situations in Met 5s, which resulted in Boston Uprising securing a reverse sweep. But when we're looking at the overall face value of this trade, what do you think that these teams are going to get from their respective D.Va players?
I mean, are they more than just D.Va players, though? I mean, maybe not in Note's case, but RCK has a little bit more in that wardrobe than Note does. So, I gotta tell you, I know, I was really disconnected from like a lot of our staff chat and the Discord chat in general. So I really didn't hear a lot about discussion or conversation, and really I expected to see more with Spider in our chat, but I think this was a head scratcher for me because I think my answer to your question is what I said. I do feel like RCK has shown a little bit more depth, not just of other heroes, but playing other heroes well in the likes of Sombra. I don't know. I just feel like at a time where Sombra has a lot of value, that seems like a player that you'd want to keep around, just for those purposes. But I know Dallas has some other options, in that area. And I don't know. It just seemed like on paper, I felt like a bit of a head scratcher. Like, then again, not to be demeaning, the off-tank player, huge. Everyone's important on the team. But that's just not going to swing things like a main healer or a main tank. I feel like those are some roles where if you're a little bit weaker, those show through a little bit more with positioning and decision making. It glares a lot more bright with those roles. So anyway, there were some crazy plays from RCK though. I gotta say, we've seen this before, Totem. A motivated player is a scary player. Like when you trade someone or you make them feel not valued or a misfit, or they feel like a commodity or something that was just, like a piece of meat. Like that's when sometimes we get some really good performances. I will say that there were moments where RCK was shaky though. It wasn't like he played flawless. There was a couple like head scratcher moments. I think he got caught out once in stealth at a crucial moment before a team fight on, I forget which map. I want to say Rialto, but that could have been. I watched a lot of Overwatch this weekend. Anyway, the whole point is that he didn't play perfect. He didn't need to, but he showed enough value, I feel like, to make Boston feel really good about the trade. The jury's going to still be out on Note, but I don't know. I didn't feel like it was the most fair trade. So maybe you saw something I didn't, or you're seeing something I'm missing, but feel like Boston came out well, and shoot, they performed. A couple of brooms came out, Totem. Some brooms, my man.
Absolutely. They were definitely cleaning up there for sure. And I have to say, like, when I first heard about this, my takeaway was basically like, okay, when you look back at stage 1 for Boston really struggled against these Sombra compositions, swapping out the D.Va for the Sombra with whoever was running it. So they basically went out and they tried to find someone that had a little bit more flexibility. Now, what I will mention is the fact that, yes, we didn't get to see Dallas Fuel, but we did get to see essentially what many people would consider to be like one of the better Western D.Va players actually not play D.Va, despite being very notably a D.Va-only player. And you just look at someone like Space from the LA Valiant, who did actually play a little bit of Sombra. So we are seeing more D.Va players flexing off of that role, even though they're not known for these DPS heroes. So I'm not be surprised to see Note actually flexing off of D.Va here in the very near future. It's just a matter of will we actually see that. Now, with the trade in itself, I do feel like RCK plays a bit more aggressive as opposed to Note, which when you pair that with someone like Fusions is definitely going to be a better fit for the team. And then if you're Dallas Fuel, I definitely think Note has had a little bit more consistency when it comes to the D.Va performances. That being said, we just haven't seen the flexibility there as of yet. That's not to say that it doesn't exist, but statistically, these two players are relatively close. So I don't think it was like a huge win or a huge loss for either side, but we're going to have a better indicator once we see how the Dallas Fuel are going to look now that they have had a little bit more time under their belt as a team. Obviously, having the entire week off is going to be a pretty big win for them. So we'll see what sort of preparations they have done for their match here in Stage 1, week number 2 ahead. But moving forward, we had a lot of other moves. So obviously, this past week we talked about the retirement of Defran from Atlanta Reign, and Atlanta Reign actually had a lot of movement in the past week. So for starters, they went to San Francisco Shock, who had traded Baby Bay, so we did get to see Baby Bay kind of fill in the Tracer, the Zarya role for Atlanta Reign this past week. They also signed an off-tank from Gladiators Legion, who the casters time and time again butchered his name, calling him FRD, which is...
Dang it, dude, I was hoping you weren't going to bring it up because I was going to say it when you were done talking. I was going to say, hey, what about FRD? Just to watch you eye roll. Damn.
Yeah, guys, his name is Fried. You know, there's a reason why Atlanta keeps doing these fried chicken memes, or just fried food memes. It's because of Fried. You know, that's why. And for whatever reason, you know, they're just going to keep calling him FRD.
Ferd. I'm going to start calling him Ferd. Hey, man, what's up with Ferd? Is he playing well? What's the Ferd, bird?
Yeah, we should just drop some F's in the chat for the pronunciation of his name in the Overwatch League, because I have a feeling this is going to continue every single week, and it's going to drive me up the goddamn wall.
It doesn't take much, though, folks.
No, it doesn't.
He's got a low threshold.
I'm already halfway there. But anyway, so we saw Fried from Gladiators Legion get picked up by the Atlanta Reign, and yes, Fried did play a significant amount of games for Atlanta Reign this past week, which was another thing that was kind of a little bit unexpected. But Baby Bay started out really good and seemed to cool off in that second game. But I want to get your thoughts on Baby Bay basically coming in and trying to fill the shoes of Defran after Baby Bay not having played in Stage 1. How do you think he kind of did overall?
Yeah, I think that kind of goes back to my, playing pissed off in a way, because Baby Bay was not necessarily playing mad. He's been cold. He's been on the bench. He was mad. He was mad last season. He was mad, during scrims in the offseason. He had his time to be mad. Now he was just hungry to get back out there. So I feel like he wasn't necessarily a player that gets mad, but his adrenaline, the emotions were kicking in. It was his chance in the big show to show I'm a high value DPS player. I can flex onto this Zarya role and do what I need to do for my team and hit these grabs. I thought he played well. I mean, I think that there was a shift in momentum in his play, but I think that was attached to the greater swing of the team play, not necessarily down to Baby Bay's individual shortfallings or mechanics. But he exceeded expectations. I was actually talking smack. I didn't think he would really. I thought he would embarrass himself being so cold, and it's been a long time since we've seen him play, man. I don't know, and he's very confident, and I think at times we'll sometimes assume the confident people are going to fall first or something along those lines. But he was serviceable, better than I thought. Again, you're not going to see the mistakes or the brilliance in that role right away, but over the stretch of the stage, we're going to get the stats. We're going to see the breakdown of how he's doing on energy management, how he's doing on deaths and things like that. I want to see a lot more of the data before we really listen. I'm still in GOATS meta. I'm still thinking he's going to play Zarya all season. God, okay, he's going to play more stuff, dude. It's hard to get out of that, to my point. But anyway, serviceable, excited, better than I thought, and looking forward to seeing if Atlanta can continue to grow a little bit with him.
Right on. Well, circling back to Boston Uprising, the trade with Dallas Fuel was not the only movement that we saw out of their camp this past week, because they also did pick up an additional flex support player from the Contenders Pacific region. So they signed former Talon esports player Persia. Now, Sample, I don't know about you, but basically after all this Boston news surfaced, I was like, okay, what? So they're basically addressing these issues on this team that I feel like aren't necessarily there. And it's just kind of been one of those moments where, you look at AimGod, who, whether it's fantasy Overwatch League points or just level of consistency, he's definitely been one of the more prominent Zenyatas in the league this season. And it's just like, yes, it is a backup, but it's also one of those things where I don't think it was a move that was needed out of necessity.
It's sad that I go to a place where I just assume one of two things about Huck, and they're both negative, is that one, he's doing this to motivate a player on the roster or make them, kind of stressed out for the job, or two, someone on that team has identified something wrong with the chemistry or the teamwork aspect of maybe that individual player, and they're bringing in this player to see if maybe they can help repair the chemistry. I don't know. Like I go to a negative place, and I'm not proud of that. But Huck has kind of earned that for me over the years. And who am I? I'm just some nobody, but he's earned my eyebrow raise, right? He's earned it. So I don't really know what the purpose is. It doesn't make any sense. I don't really trust their president of gaming, and I have no idea.
Well, if there's one thing you can't really argue with, it's the fact that while despite as much movement as they have had on the roster, they have continued to produce results.
I know. That makes me mad. So that's what I'm mad about. You know,
further escalates things.
I know, right? God.
All right.
Good. That's it. I mean, they played well, but hey, let's not crown them until they play some real teams. All right, let's go.
All right. So let me quickly go over the coach changes, and then we'll circle back to some of the other player movement. So quite a bit happened. So for the Dallas Fuel, they saw Coco, one of the original Envious members who had served as an assistant coach for the team, stepping down. So he is back in his home country now. Outside of that, we also saw Washington Justice release one of their coaches in Abyssal. Toronto Defiant released their strategic coach, Don. We also saw Damon, the head coach of the Paris Eternal, stepping down, and he signed on to be the Dallas Fuel's new assistant coach, who will be working with their tank line. So a little bit of a demotion there. So to fill Damon's spot for that head coach role on the Paris Eternal, they had promoted their player development coach, Fefe. So he's going to be their new head coach. And, I'm pretty sure that was all of the coach changes. And I have to say, obviously we already covered the Mayhem coach change as well. So there was that. Were you that surprised to see Damon take what would definitely be considered a demotion? Or do you think it's just one of those lateral moves where when you look at Dallas, their coaching staff has a lot of depth to it. So there's a lot to be gained with that sort of experience, even at that level.
Right. I think regardless of the title you hold, if you're in a coaching position for an Overwatch League team, if you've moved to LA or you're embedded with that organization's corporate headquarters, there's no reason that you wouldn't try to continue that career path. I feel like that just, I would, say if I wanted to still be in the Overwatch League and I was still passionate about coaching, I would take a demotion. And you see a lot of that in coaching and professional and college sports, coaches kind of going up and down different ranks, different tiers. There is a lot of shuffle. There's coaches that go to that head coaching position, don't necessarily perform that well, and then end up, getting demoted, and then they kind of be a coordinator for a little bit, assistant coach, and they go back to the head coach. And, I think it's pretty normal for coaching. There's a lot less ego involved. It's more of a business side of things. And you're not necessarily the face of the organization. So again, it's a lot easier for you to kind of change teams without fans and people being really confused until until we start broadcasting the head coaches more on the broadcast, and then they'll be getting just as famous as the players sometimes. Look at Siegel. I'm sorry, dude. Just shoot me in the face, Totem. I meant Jane, but that's kind of messed up in my brain that I've now amalgamated Siegel's face and Jane's face into this whole one homogenous guy. Clearly Siegel has a beard in my brain now. But Jane, I mean, he has such a prominent presence, where he does, So I mean, sorry, your whole question was about. I answered the question, but I just, was thinking that I don't think it's going to be surprising to see more demotions like this. I just think these guys got into helping and coaching Overwatch League, that they're going to take any position they can to stay there and do that.
I mean, it's definitely one of those things where having the experience is definitely going to help out. And I will say too, like we got to see kind of a different approach too with one of the other player signings of this past week, and this is something that is kind of like out of left field, so to speak. So when you look at Toronto Defiant, yes, they had Stellar retire here in the last week, and they went out and they picked up someone who I'll run down basically their entire Augmented Overwatch career. So they played one game in Open Division, then it got picked up by Second Wind to compete in Contenders North America. They played one game with Second Wind, and then they got signed to the Toronto Defiant. That player is a DPS player, I'm 37. So he basically went through the entirety of Path to Pro in the span of 20 days, which is the fastest anyone has gone through the Path to Pro. Kind of like circling back to one of the points you made earlier, there are some players that have been on the Path to Pro that never quite make a name for themselves, or they're just kind of stuck there. And then here you have someone who doesn't have any sort of like a long track record, maybe doesn't have any sort of like preset reputation or anything, like any sort of red flags. And you look at it from a recruiter's perspective of, well, that means that this type of player isn't going to have any sort of like baggage. There's like no drama being brought onto the team with them. But it is definitely a huge risk because they are still pretty new. But for someone to get picked up after only 20 days from Open Division to Contenders to Overwatch League is just unbelievable. Like, I did not think that we'd ever kind of get to the point where we'd literally be signing people speedrunning through things. And I have to say, like, with I'm 37, it definitely brought, like, to me, the funniest moment of the past weekend. So I don't know if you got to see the Defiant post-game interview with I'm 37 with Danny.
I did not. I was like, yeah, I didn't realize that. Yeah, no. So now you have to tell me and the audience, for anyone that missed, right. You have to tell us as if we've never seen it. Yeah.
Okay. So this was after Toronto won. Spoilers. But I'm 37 was a post-game interview, and Danny, the Korean translator, was there. So Danny, of course, is speaking to I'm 37 in Korean. He's ready to translate, and I'm 37, after Danny asks him something in Korean, grabs a microphone out of his hand and just speaks fluent English. And then he just looks at him after I'm 37 says something in English after he grabs the microphone back, and he's just like, you could have told me you spoke English. And it was just one of those moments that
it was probably staged.
Hilarity.
It was probably staged, but yeah, that's great.
It was just one of those moments because, like, as soon as he spoke English, the entire audience, was cheering, right? Because they didn't expect it. But this is a player who has been going to school in British Columbia. He's been residing in Canada. So he's been picking up a lot of English, and we do know, like, a lot of these players are taking, classes for languages to help with the communication aspect. But it was just one of those moments where we're still not quite accustomed to seeing that from the Korean players in the league. Yeah. But
no, that's a cool moment, and I will go back and seek out the Twitch clip, and I smiled as you said it, so I would be cheering too.
But man, like, it was one of those things where, you got to see him play DPS. You got to see him play. He was playing Zarya for Second Wind, and then of course he just comes in. He did suffer a little bit from Begita jail, but we got to see him play a ton of Hitscan, a lot of Widowmaker, and this kid was popping off. And a quick side note: this guy's like 6'2". He's by far the tallest Korean in the league.
Yeah, I mean, almost getting as tall as me, Totem. Maybe one day. I'm just kidding. I'm tiny. I'm 2 feet tall.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to like just leave it hanging there, but I'm like kind of fixated on the clip. I would like to see him get out of Brigida jail a little more, and I want to see some more of the plays. I'm excited.
All right, so outside of that, that's basically like all of the roster shifts that we did see But there was another one that I do want to bring up, and that's because it's very uncommon. So when we look at Glitter's Legion, who lost Fried to, Atlanta Reign, as he's, it seems to be like a revolving door of Diva players and off tanks on that team. I don't know quite what the situation is with Daco, but that's kind of besides the point. Who knows what's going to happen with Atlanta at this point, because they keep making changes there. But that obviously left a vacancy on Gladiators Legion, which is the LA Gladiators Academy team. So how they're going to temporarily deal with this is they have signed Bishu, who has not competed in the Overwatch League this season as of yet due to some health issues that he suffered in Stage 1. And we don't have any sort of timetable for his return to the main roster as of yet. But Bishu has signed a two-way contract, so he will temporarily be filling in for Gladiators Legion. So, looking at Bishu, the last match that he played was during the Community Countdown. This was back on February 10th. But his last official match was against the London Spitfire in last year's playoffs. So this is really like one of the first instances in the Overwatch League where we have someone that's been in the league that has gone on to sign a two-way contract player in order to help their academy team. So it's definitely a class act. And when you look at Gladiators Legion, they also have another two-way player, also on the tank line, that being none other than Panker. So you kind of have this opportunity to maybe build a little bit of synergy up with a potential tank duo that you could see with the LA Gladiators in the future. So it's definitely an interesting take. And really, I'm just curious to see what this is going to mean for Bishu long term, what the plan is once he's healthy, because as of now, we've only seen Void filling in on an off-tank position for the LA Gladiators so far throughout the season.
Yeah, I think this is just another one of those things that I have kind of some emotional attachment to Bishu, and just always, I've been a big fan of his, was kind of surprised to see some of the moves the Gladiators made in the offseason that pretty much was kind of overriding his role. And, some of those suspicions were confirmed when, to your point, he hasn't had a lot of play time. And now with the departure of Fried, you've kind of got this vacuum that needs to be filled. And I think the best way to do that is to make sure it's a two-way contract. So like, this is a good instance of a good way to apply the two-way contract that makes sense for everybody. And I personally, again, am just very content with the outcome just based upon my man crush on Bishu. I don't know why I've always liked Bishu. I've just always been, I don't know, I guess I've just watched him for a long time. He's been around and on teams, and his name's been popping up for a long time. So yeah, anyway, I don't know. I'm, this really is going to mean good things for, the Legion Academy. So I think that's really the best news there is they're getting a lot of experience, a lot of depth and knowledge. And I think he'll stand out. I'm kind of, I don't watch a ton of contenders, as you know. Right. But, I kind of will be fascinated to see what impact he makes in lieu of Fried. But
yeah. I do want to note that he would be playing tonight as Gladiators Legion does go up against Mayhem Academy. And looks like they close out the group stage against Bermuda. So I'm quickly just looking at how Gladiators Legion is doing right now. So for contenders, you actually have the top 6 teams advancing to the playoffs. And right now, Legion are with a 3-2 record with a +4 map differential. So it does look like they are going to be competing in the playoffs. So with that in mind, it will be, a couple of weeks of play for sure for him. But I'm definitely going to go check this out post-show to see how he's going to fare after, maybe not actively scrimming all that often here in the past couple of weeks, just due to him being sick. So definitely going to check that out, and I wish him nothing but the best. And hopefully he'll be back on the main roster in no time. And worst case scenario, work a little bit with someone that has a very promising future, especially if we continue to see Winston kind of at the forefront on the tank line. More on that later, because there's been a lot of shakeups in Stage 2 already.
A lot of them.
And it's really crazy, especially, there's kind of like one match where, we kind of saw more heroes compared to, in one match, mind you, compared to all of Overwatch League Season 1. So there's that too.
There's that. Yeah, that's something.
So, of course, with all of this movement when it comes to rosters, people stepping down, people retiring, coaches kind of all over the place, people speed running, sprinting through the path of pro, there's a lot of value in stocks, whether they're on the rise or on the fall. So let's go ahead and talk about player and team performances and see who is moving. So for stock up and stock down, I'm going to revolve around a certain organization, and that is none other than the Florida Mayhem. So I will say, based off of everything we saw here in Stage 2, Week 1, I do feel like, despite not winning, their stock is going to be on the rise. This is a team that, when you look at them, they have just been kind of marred with inconsistencies, and a lot of that has to boil down to the overall communication of this team. We got to see them through a lot of different looks out there in the past week. And while all of them may not have been hits, I will say I like to see the experimentation going out. And of course, we got to see that with quite a few teams out there. But, when you kind of look at the Western players that have been on this team, I absolutely feel terrible for McGrave. He was kind of brought on and then he's just kind of shoved aside.
Hello, goodbye.
Yeah, he's just like, okay, yeah, you're moving up, a very promising Diva player, and then he's kind of out the door. And
hey, McGravy, do you speak Korean? No?
Nope.
See ya.
Hopefully, we'll hear something in regards to that here within the next week or so we can talk about wherever they may end up on the next show. But I feel like out of the three Western players who were on the out, so to speak, I do not have the most faith that Tavik is going to find a team. And I say that primarily just due to the fact that we've kind of seen a lot of these Overwatch OGs kind of either not playing up to, what standards we might have set for them on players, but we've seen a lot of these players falling off over time or just not playing outright. So Tavik has always kind of been one of those players who, yes, he has played at a high level, but he's never really mastered any of the characters in the hero pool. So he's a very situational type hero, and while I guess he can fill like whatever role, whether it's Brigitte, whether he's gets to play a little bit of Junkrat in a meta like this, where we have seen a little bit more Junkrat on certain maps, he's really hard to find a home for, I would say, just because there are going to be better options out there. And I feel like that's just going to mean that Tavik is going to be without a new home when kind of all of the dust settles. So I will say, like, he's definitely someone that I'm still going to watch streams for. And I hope he finds a new home, but I have that sinking feeling just knowing how much of a changing of the guard we have seen here in recent months.
Shoot, if I got through the Coco news, I can get through some Tavik news. All right, I've had some rough days in the Overwatch League. We got through Internet Hulk. All right, I'm pretty sure we can make it through Tavik officially retiring. But I was going to say, my one thought is like, Tavik is one of those names that I've had a connection to since my beta access of Overwatch. So that, I've got to let go of some of these personal connections. And just because they've been around for a long time doesn't mean that they deserve to be in the league. And I know that's mean to say, but that's true. And I don't think you're wrong to say that about Tavik. So anyway, not to dwell in the past, but I guess it's time for me to play some stock up, stock down. It's going up in the market, Totem. Didn't know if you saw the the board here, but going up on the board, just its stock is rising through the roof. It's amazing. It's a team known as the London Spitfire, right? It's a London Spitfire, Totem. I don't know why. I just want to be Cockney British sometimes for no reason.
I honestly didn't know how long you were actually going to do that, so I was just
right. So if you want me to do the whole bit like this, that's fine, mate. This is how it's going to be, right? So the London Spitfire gesture, he's crushing it, mate. He's crushing it. I just sound like Bryn. I'm just Bryn. Well, anyway, no, I think in all seriousness, this team certainly I think is moving in the right direction. there were some inconsistencies during stage one. We saw some growth. We saw some wins against some key teams, and we were like, okay, this team still got it somewhere in there. But this week, or at this week one of stage two, so kind of as we move to stage two, they certainly appear to be trending even in a better direction. The match against Florida, we kind of spoke about it earlier. A 2-1 map score against Florida doesn't sound that impressive, but Florida, kind of is making some changes, and they appear to be a different team. So yes, same result from Florida, but they appeared to be a better opponent against London. So I thought that was a good win, showed some resiliency. And then to finish off the week, just making Atlanta limp home. I mean, just putting a beating on them, in a way. I felt like it really revolved around gesture. So I know I kind of said that earlier, my British voice, to be funny, but I certainly do feel like a big part of that is his Winston play, as we kind of are now in this period where we're seeing a lot more Winston show up at the GOATS party, and we're seeing some less conventional stuff. But a lot of it was some other that less conventional stuff. You're going to see some more aggressive tank play and aggressive tank choices. And I think that's going to suit him a little bit better as we kind of change from the death ball comps we've been kind of seeing in the past. But it was kind of revolved around him. I mean, it really is just strong team play that I felt that they displayed. They showed a lot better ult management. They showed a lot better decision making. They kind of knew when to kind of cut and turn from team fights. They really knew when to engage. And those are some of the things that made London really successful in season one. And it's nice to kind of see them get back to form. So their stock going up. Nice job, London, looking good.
Yeah, and I do want to note we also saw 100% more birdering.
I've been to, I guess I didn't write it in my notes, but that is, part of that too, is that I don't think that birdering hasn't been worthy of the field.
Right.
I think it's now that the style of play complements birdering more, you're going to see him more. And that's, again, kind of that aggression. And that comes from the hero choices. And I think that that's what Winston does to your team and really impacts what DPS are alongside that main tank.
Absolutely.
All right. So good call out. The other team that's going down, not what's the opposite of up totem, that's down. Who's going down is the Guangzhou Charge. This was a team that I actually kind of earmarked to be a playoff team for stage two, a team that I saw was trending in the right direction. But I really was kind of disappointed by the end of this last weekend. You're going to lose games. I understand that. It just felt like the quality of losses. I mean, San Francisco is playing really well right now. They just didn't seem to put up as much of a fight or even take a map off, and I really expected them to do that. But to be 4-0'd by Paris, that is what kind of set my mind in a different place, and it could just be an anomaly from the week. But I'll tell you that I felt like Guangzhou was going to turn the corner, and you got to beat teams like Paris if you're going to turn that corner. You got to show up and take a map or two off San Francisco to show you can compete. And so I'm kind of regretting putting them in my stage 2 playoff predictions.
We both kind of did that.
Yeah, I know. And you got to protect Shu. Shu is such a carry on the team and has such an opportunity to be, but it's just, I don't know if it's all Rio or a combination of Rio and Hotba and that inconsistent DPS lineup. There just needs to be some overall changes there to make sure you're playing to the strengths of that team. And they got to win those easier matchups. I think they have the talent to, and it's kind of a bummer. So yeah, kind of eating crow on the Guangzhou Charge. So stock down.
Yeah, and I mean, after week one, it definitely seems like maybe we just need to swap out our predictions and just put Chengdu there instead of Guangzhou after that. Because, man, what a week
I almost would say that, except for let's look at who Chengdu played before we jump on that boat.
The strength of schedule heavily favors Chengdu in this current stage.
I know you did the math, so I'm just going to be patient. I'm not going to let the record sway me. But my first thought was like, damn, picked the wrong Chinese team.
Now, what I will say is there was another moment that basically went straight down. And this is Chengdu Hunters related. So on Watch Point Gibraltar, we were in time big. Chengdu was on the defense, and Jinmu was on Hanzo. You know, they're getting to like the underpass there, and he's like, you know what, guys, I got this. He jumps off of the high ground and shoots a dragon strike literally into the ground. I'm like, that was a thing. Just not you hate to see it.
I'm turning red. I'm so embarrassed thinking about it. Like, there had to be some other kind of thing that happened, but it hurt. And Jinmu for the win moo has been my trademark slogan. Mm-hmm. That was not for the win moo, dude.
Nope.
Not for the win moo.
I mean, if anything, it just went straight through the payload and straight through the map. Not much value there. But anyways, let's go ahead and talk about Stage 2 Week 1. There was a lot to like. Maybe some stuff to we might need to argue about. Who knows? But let's move into our main discussions. There was a lot going on, a lot to take in, a lot of experimentation going on with the teams. We've got to see a lot of firsts. So we got a new map in Paris. We got to see that played. We have Baptiste, who got to see a fairly decent amount of playtime as well. But first off, let's talk about Paris. No, not Paris Eternal. We're talking about the map. Everyone's favorite map type in 2CP, aka Assault. Everyone loves it. You know, it's their favorite map. Haven't had any issues with those maps ever. And Paris, like, I knew that this was going to be a rough go. And I was like, okay, maybe by spectating the Overwatch League on Paris, I'll have a better indication of how to play this map. That was absolutely not the case. Basically, the takeaway you have from Paris is it's an absolute cluster F. Like, it's just chaos. Like, I don't know how else to describe it. There's so much going on, and it's definitely been one of the more conflicted maps in the game.
Right. So, like, real fast, like, it takes time to build nuance for teams on these maps, right? We knew that. We've seen other maps hit the scene, and it take a little bit of time, but pretty quickly you kind of finesse out routes and what tanks to use for those routes and where to push and all that. It's a mess right now. It's a mess. And I think we all knew it would be, like, even at the start of the league, or started like the stage when we saw it, and we even joked about it. We even said, like, oh, it's a real open map in places and it's a real suffocating map in places. And we talked about that, really, like the idea of like open and closed, wide and narrow. Every opposite you can think of, that is Paris, and it's just it's fun. It really is. And like, because it's also the experimental meta time, there's some weird hero choices, and it's pretty fun, but it's sloppy. It's not great to watch Overwatch for a new viewer.
The map looks great. It does not play great.
Right. Yeah,
on either side.
Yeah, I mean, it's never does the map look great. They always look good. Always look good. It's but yeah, 2CP is a hard game mode to build a map for, right? And like, what's the best they've done? Hanamura? Yeah, like, is that the best? I don't know, because it's not Volskaya, so I don't know. Anyway, I digress.
Yeah, what I will say is when you look at Paris, it definitely has one of the more restrictive choke points in the game. It also has one of the longest runs to the actual objective. And then when you look at the second point, I mean, that's really where the chaos ensues, because it opens up a lot. The high ground options just aren't really there on point B, and that is just, you got to see quite a bit of bunker comps at that point. Some teams trying to bunker against bunker for some reason. I don't know why that's even a thing, because you can't really counter that with the same thing. But hopefully the play will get cleaned up a little bit. But first impressions of Paris, the map, it was a rough go, for sure. But we also got to see our first look at Baptiste. So let's look at how the hero pool kind of did in regards to the support. So I do have pick rates, thanks to our good buddy Switch from omnicmeta.com. And of course, they're doing their Overwatch League stats, all of that good stuff. And while it doesn't compare this current week to the last week of stage number 1, we at least get to see what the pick rate are for all of the heroes. And Baptiste saw a 12.8% pick rate in stage 2, week number 1. So when you're looking at the support lineup, You have Lucio still leading the pack at a 76.4% pick rate. Brigitte had a 62.8. And then we saw Anna at 24.9, Mercy at 18.7, and Moira at 9.1. So Baptiste falling a little bit behind, second to last, only in front of Moira. And out of all the Baptiste players that we saw, I feel like the two major standouts were definitely Rascal of the San Francisco Shock, as well as Neko of the Toronto Defiant. So you have a DPS player in one instance, and a flex support in the other. And, okay, Sambo vanished. He'll be back momentarily, guys. But looking at the overall plaything that we saw, you had Rascal kind of lead in things there. He played for a total of 36 minutes. Neko was the only other Overwatch League player to have played over 20 minutes on Baptiste. And for the most part, we did get to see a lot of compositions involving Bunker with Baptiste. Now, for the most part, it was usually like you would run in Orisa with a D.Va for the tank line. The DPS would really fluctuate. For the most part, it was like Bastion getting paired with a Pharah in the sky, and then you'd have Mercy supporting alongside Baptiste. And one of the key plays that I distinctively remember was you had Neko, and this was in the Toronto Defiant versus the Boston Uprising series, and they were playing, it was Hanamura, and they were on defense. So Neko basically looked up in the sky. He had pre-fired the alternate fire into the air. Then we saw Boston Uprising look to engage. So as Boston engaged, we saw an EMP come out from Boston Uprising. You saw the pre-fire shots starting to land, which definitely kept Toronto Defiant up on their defense. So it was enough to keep the hack targets up with the pre-fire. We saw the Immortality Field coming out from Neko, and this was during a Dragon Strike. The Dragon Strike was like trying to cut through that building on the left-hand side, and it kept everyone up. And it was just one of those moments that was a definite standout, because a lot of people, I would say, got maybe not the best usage out of the Immortality Field, but when it comes to like those clutch moments, Neko definitely got the usage out of it compared to some of the other Baptiste. So I have to say, like, Baptiste early on, it seems to be mostly fit in bunker comps. We did get to see a little bit of iteration trying to run Baptiste into 3-3, which was pretty shaky. I don't know if you necessarily get the full usage out of his amplification matrix, because when you look at the people that are in that composition, not a lot of them get usage out of that. Sure, you can like throw like a fire strike really quick through the amplification, and you might be able to like pick off a quick target there. Zenyatta projectiles will fire a little bit faster, but outside of that, you don't have a lot to pair with that. So I don't feel like Baptiste is primarily going to be used in the 3-3, and it will strictly be used in these bunker compositions moving forward. And hopefully, Simon will get back here any minutes, but I do feel like Baptiste is going to be seeing more play. Obviously, right now, it is really early on, and to be honest, I was really surprised to see his pick rate even be above 12% at that rate. I was expecting him to either A, just not see play in Stage 2 Week 1, just due to the limited amount of practice time, but this is only the beginning with a new hero, and I'm expecting the overall level of play to definitely increase as time progresses. But it was interesting to see that either it was primarily like a flex support player picking up the Baptiste, because there was a lot of discussions of, well, maybe it's either going to be the D.Va player or maybe it is going to be the main support player, but that was definitely not the case based off of what we saw. So moving on, we also got to see a lot of variation in regards to the 3-3 composition. Obviously, we kind of went in and there was a lot of question marks about, well, what is the meta going to be in stage number 2? There has been a lot of experimentation going on right now, and 3-3 was still the go-to so far this stage. And that being said, one of the biggest takeaways that we saw in Stage 2 Week number 1 was the ultimate rise of Winston being used in the 3-3, and it even surpassed Reinhardt's usage in Stage 2, Week 1. So when you look at the pick rates, you had Winston for the tank line, who for main tanks was leading the way, in a 34.9% pick rate. And then for Reinhardt wasn't too far behind. He was at 34.7%, so really only a 0.2% differential between those two tanks. And this is really the only time we've seen a Winston getting the nod over Reinhardt primarily. Now, that being said, with Wrecking Ball's recent balance changes, we did see a pretty significant rise of Wrecking Ball play as his pick rate jumped up to 20.5%. Pretty significant over what we saw here in the last stage. And I feel like with the rise of DPS heroes also pretty much brought to the forefront, we are going to be seeing more and more Wrecking Ball just because his overall toolkit pairs well with a lot of the snipers that we have been seeing. So a lot of Wrecking Ball was being used with, Widowmaker trying to do the power drive into the easy headshots, and Citrus knocks you straight up into the air. So it's definitely nice to see, and I'm really curious to see how teams are going to be approaching this, because a lot of situations when you're running Winston 3-3 against the Reinhardt 3-3, it definitely leaves you very susceptible to the Earth Shatters, because you don't really have a way to shield your team and protect them from the Shatters. You're not always going to have the bubbles up or the perfect placement. And there's definitely a lot of mind games that go on in regards to, well, when are you eventually going to try to mirror the Reinhardt 3-3? So definitely something to keep an eye on as the time progresses. But we saw a ton of different heroes being played here in regards to the meta. So just looking at the pick rates, yes, 3-3 was still at the forefront. And we did see a lot of Sombra play again. So a lot of D.Va players flexing over to Sombra. As I mentioned, obviously RCK, probably one of the more notable D.Va players who flexes off of that. And I did mention Space for LA Valiant did show a little bit of Sombra, and Sombra saw a 28.8% usage. When you compare that to basically doubled up, because it was 14.7% here in Stage 1, Week number 5. So a pretty significant boost for him as well. Outside of that, though, we got to see a hefty amount of Pharah, who saw a 16% pick rate. Pretty notable. A 14% jump there. Slambo is on his 4G. Fantastic, Slambo. Hopefully you can get back. But across the board, some major shifts in regards to the meta. And I'll go ahead and link. I'll link this in the chat so everyone can go check it out. You can go check out the pick rates as Slambo tries to crawl his way out of the abyss. So just looking at that, hit scan definitely very prominent, whether it's Baptiste, Soldier. I'm even going to see quite a bit of Tracer as well. And I have to say, this is very good signs. We got to see a lot of heroes getting played, and one match in particular saw 27 of the game's 30 heroes being used. That was when you had the Chengdu Hunters going up against the Washington Justice. So probably not a game that you would have expected straight fireworks from. His goat's broken now. Okay, here's the thing with the 3-3 meta. When you look back at this patch, it seems like Blizzard is kind of going through a phase where rather than trying to directly nerf all the components of 3-3, their solution was, okay, we're going to take a different approach. Let's just buff everything else. And the crazy thing is, despite 3-3 being prominent still, we're still at a point in the game where we've never seen this many heroes getting played at the competitive level. So it's a tricky situation to kind of balance, just because 3-3 isn't going to be played in every game. And in this particular series between Chengdu and Washington, you don't even get to see 3-3 at all. Now, yes, it is a little bit odd, but it has happened. And we did see 27 of 30 heroes getting played in a 4-map series, which, looking back, it's more heroes than we got to see throughout the entirety of the inaugural season. So looking at the Hunters going up against the Justice, there were only three heroes not being played. That was Ashe, Roadhog, and Reaper. And quick side note, we did get to see a little bit of Roadhog in this week 1 as well. Seen a lot of hook picks and a lot of extra burst potential with the shield pressure, so always happy to see the Hog coming into the fold. His pick rate, though, wasn't the best. I think it was only like under 6%, so it wasn't too great overall. But the Hunters did end up taking this series 3-1, and they did cap off a 2-0 week. So I will say after stage 2, week 1, the biggest takeaway is definitely the fact that the meta is still evolving. We're going to see the meta continue to grow as the stage develops, but there's been a bigger fluctuation of the heroes that we have been seeing, and a lot of teams trying to run heavier DPS compositions. But at the end of the day, you're still going to have maps that do have a preference towards running 3-3. And some of those maps are in the current map pool for stage number 2. So while, yes, 3-3 is still being run as kind of like the main strategy, we are seeing a lot more experimentation, whether it's bunker compositions, which I have to say, like, spectating the bunker compositions is not that exciting. I hate to say it because it's different, but it doesn't make for the best viewership in regards to just seeing how everything gets laid out. It's definitely one of those things where everything's just all in one spot, and I'd rather take like the murder ball type approach with the 3-3. It looks better on screen. But, you know, we're going to see a little bit of Bastion, so it can't be all too bad. But I do feel like right now, a lot of teams are picking up different things. They're trying out new things. We even got to see like triple tank dive, running the Wrecking Ball, Winston, and Diva, which was another one of the scenes that we always kind of like speculated, kind of like early on when the Wrecking Ball came out, that we would like to see. And that worked to varying degrees of success. But looking ahead at stage 2, week number 2, we do have a couple of marquee matches that I do want to highlight. So first up on Thursday, we have 2 pretty prominent matches. So first up, we have the Vancouver Titans going up against the Seoul Dynasty, and that is a rematch of the stage 1 semifinals. And you know, Slambo, he is my #soulmates. We are both on the solar coaster, riding and dying with the Dynasty, and Titans are definitely our other team. So our 2 dads fighting yet again. And this is one of 2 matches that we are going to see between these 2 teams this stage. And the Dynasty, well, despite getting 4-0'd in the semifinals, are a team that has completed maps against the Titans, which is not something all of these teams can be saying. Now, that being said, Titans are basically one of these teams that, let's say you do really well. You know, you're feeling good on one of your attacks. You have like 3.5 minutes left in the time bank. And we got to see this last week in stage 2, week 1, which was on King's Row. Titans are basically like, oh yeah, that's nice. And then they just run it with like 5.5 minutes in the time bank on their attack. You don't see any other team in the Overwatch League doing that, where they can effectively like get a really early pickoff, like on a crucial member on their team, and then that snowballs the entirety of the map, and then at the end of the day, they don't even blink. Like, it's just one of the most surreal things when it comes to the Vancouver Titans, where no one is able to put the amount of pressure on these teams on attack, and they're going to continue to break records throughout this season, and this is only the beginning for them. But the Dynasty, they've been doing a lot of experimentation with their roster, and their Somber Goats has looked pretty good. Now, on the other hand, there's that kind of like discussion point with the Somber Goats where, well, the teams that aren't that great running the traditional 3-3 only run Sombra due to that reason, because they don't want to try to mirror comp. And there definitely is a lot to say about that, and Vancouver Titans have proven to be the best 3-3 team in the league. So are we going to see Michelle on the Sombra? Probably, but I don't think that is something that we're going to be able to rely on throughout the entirety of the series. Titans have struggled with heavier DPS compositions, which we got to see when the Titans face the Trundu Hunter. So I don't know if the Dynasty are going to plan on trying to flex on them a little bit. But the Titans are just one of these teams this season who can bend, but they haven't been broken as of yet. So we'll see whether or not the Dynasty can continue to have similar success against the Titans. But I would absolutely love to see a couple of maps getting taken to really help build the Dynasty up further after a very good Stage 1 playoff run for that team. Moving ahead, we also have a pretty big match on Thursday. This one is between the Toronto Defiant and the Philadelphia Fusion. So Fusion, looking back at Stage 1, this is one of those teams that suffered greatly running Reinhardt in the 3-3. So Sato get into play a little bit more. Winston is definitely going to be to the Fusion's favor. That being said, though, at the end of the day, this still is Philadelphia. This is one of the only teams in the league that I can think of that can absolutely beat the best teams in the league, then look terrible against the worst teams in the league. It's so hard to rate the Fusion because you have this one aspect where they have this X factor when it comes to clutch moments, where if you take them to a map 5, chances are Philadelphia are going to take it. This is something that has been very prominent at the Overwatch League level. It's also kind of transcended to their academy team in Fusion University, who, by the way, are 30-0 all-time in contenders in North America. And that shows no signs of slowing down. So do not be surprised if they go back-to-back championships. But Fusion, they look more at home in either Winston 3-3 or in heavier DPS compositions. And if you're EQO, you are just begging for an opportunity to flex off of Brigitte, because the Brigitte stats when it comes to the Fusion kind of speaks for themselves, because if EQO goes down first, Fusion just end up losing the fight. And that's not something that you could heavily rely on. You know, it's not the bumper effect where if bumper dies, you know, Titans just go out and still end up taking the majority of the fights. Not the case for Philadelphia Fusion. And the Fight are another one of these teams who, while despite having some changes, you know, they've shown a lot of promise, even with a new addition to their roster with I'm37. So I really hope we get to see a little bit of Carpe versus I'm37 with a little bit of a Widow duel. I'd love to see it, see how he fares, because I'm37 definitely stood out in week 1, and who better to kind of like match yourself against or test yourself against in the Overwatch League on Widow than Carpe, who has proven to be the most consistent Widow that we have to offer. So outside of that, speaking of Toronto, they also have another series this week, and this one is going to be up against the Dallas Fuel on Saturday. So Dallas Fuel this week plays Toronto and Paris. This will be the debut of note for the Dallas Fuel. So, you know, Effect is out. RCK is in Boston. We have Note coming into the Dallas Fuel, and we already got to see what RCK was able to do for Boston Uprising. What is the response going to be from the Dallas Fuel now that they have had that extra time to get Note acquainted with the team in order to get, you know, the team chemistry there? Is it going to be up to par? Is Note going to flex off of Diva? There's a lot of question marks about Dallas Fuel right now, despite them kind of being one of those teams that is still in the run-in as a bubble team right now. Now, it's unfortunate that they were the only team to have a 4-3 record that didn't make the top 8 cut for the Stage 1 playoffs. But Note is definitely one of those players who he's definitely been one of the more consistent players, and I feel like still to this day, he's still a little bit underrated by the general competitive Overwatch community. And I really hope he gets to show off some of his other heroes to the table. So I'm really anxious to see that. And a couple other storylines to kind of follow. You also have Washington Justice going up against the New York Excelsior this week. And Washington is a very curious team right now. So we had Corey get into flex over to Widow quite a bit this past week. And we've always kind of had this Corey who either pops off or he's essentially an afterthought. And in their first series this past week, he was definitely popping off. We got to see a lot of consecutive headshot montages on a Widowmaker. That's a Corey we want to see. That's not always the Corey we get to get And with this series, we also get to see Ark going up against his former team for the first time. And no matter how you slice this, New York Excelsior definitely going to be the favorite team. Washington have gotten to play a variety of different heroes, and we're still trying to figure out what sort of team Washington actually is. So I don't quite know what to make of them yet, but I do hope that we do get to see Corey flex into more DPS here in the near future, because they're going to live and die off of their DPS's success. So moving forward, there's another team that's definitely had a lot of question marks around them, and that is the LA Valiant, a team that is still seeking their first win of this season. And we got to see them do a lot of experimentation here in this last week. I know in their series last week, they essentially played their bench, right? Like they had Custa out there. Okay, sidetracking. I shouldn't say Custa is like perma bench, because he did play, but he was on the bench, for the other game. So I'm sticking with it. But we saw Custa come in. We got to see KSF come in. We got to see Bunny come in. That's fantastic, Sambo. So some guy crashed on the street into the telecom stuff. Fantastic. That is great. Unfortunate for me. Terrible for you. But hopefully they can get that sorted. So with the LA Valiant, that first win has been super elusive. We got to see Space flexing over to the Sombra, which was honestly hard to watch. Hate to see it, because he is one of the best Western divas in the league. But I at least appreciate the fact that the LA Valiant are trying new things. You had Custa in there. You had the Valiant running 3-3 with Custa in it, so we gotta get to the bottom of whether or not Custa was too smart to run 3-3 with the LA Valiant. The 3-3 did not look that great. And in retrospect too, like we also didn't see Kariv in that series. You had Bunny playing the Zarya role on that team, and that was definitely one of the things that I know I was definitely hard on Kariv throughout stage 1, especially for his bubble management. And it just kind of shows like that the Zarya wasn't this team's only problem. And it's so hard to like kind of pinpoint what the issue is with this team, but when you look at them on stage, Slambo, and I'm sure that you can agree with this, they just look so demoralized as a team. Like, it almost seems like they don't want to be there. Like, that just seems like one of these teams that are on the brink of just shutting down, and I don't know what the solution is going to be. Maybe they're going to go out and try to target the Mayhem's Western players. I don't know, but it's been really rough watching the Valiant perform on stage and just seeing them kind of like, I'm not going to say they're buckling underneath the pressure, but it seems like everything is getting to them. And the more losses that this team continues to pile up, the heavier that burden is going to be on them to try to right their track, so to speak. So we'll see what their plan is going to be. It's not any one person's fault, but the blame is kind of being thrown around everywhere. And I don't know where it's eventually going to land. Whether it is, a managerial thing, whether it is on the players, I don't know. But, I was at least happy to see Custa coming in and playing. Maybe the kooky Lucio experiment is over. I don't know. It's just one of those strange things. I will say, though, the Brigida play from Agilities, I feel like is a little troubling in the sense that he plays a very aggressive Brigida. And while Fate has been aggressive on Winston, it's just due to those kind of Zarya issues where we haven't got to see him take that next step on that aggression. So I feel like there's a lot of discomfort there from those positions as a whole, to the point where it's kind of like that seed of doubt in the back of the mind of Fate, where he doesn't quite know when to actually engage. So that's definitely something to be keeping an eye on as the season progresses. And last but not least, I have to say, the other major takeaway and storyline to follow is just after week number 1, we saw a lot of teams coming out with the 2-0 record. You had the San Francisco Shock, who didn't drop a map. You have the New York Excelsior. Chengdu Hunters are 2-0. You have the Spitfire, who are 2-0. Gladiators, who have been building that momentum after their really good start. Their really good second half of Stage 1, I should say, because the start was a little bit rough, but they picked up a lot of momentum. And of course, Uprising had 2 reverse sweeps to cap off the week. So are any of these teams going to falter in week 2? Or are these going to be the teams that are going to be in the run-in when it comes playoffs time? And at the same, like, I feel like you don't have anything to worry about with, like, the Shock, NYXL, Titans. These are teams that are battle-tested at this point, and they continue to build that momentum. But, Hunters are really the curious case here, because this is the team who has the easiest strength of schedule in stage number 2. But is that going to result in them actually getting a top 8 finish? It's so hard to say, but I feel confident in saying that the LA Gladiators are definitely going to be in the playoffs this stage. Spitfires seem to be a step in the right direction, as we had mentioned earlier in the show. And I really hope we get to see a little bit more bird rain over onto the Hitscan Heroes. And if week 1 is any indicator, that's probably going to be what we are going to be seeing from him. So hopefully we can see that level of consistency that we have been used to. That way, you can take a little bit of the burden off of Profit, so he doesn't have to be a one-man show for this team. And that's the other thing, too, with London. When are we going to get to see Krillin? You see the Titans bringing in Repel in these garbage maps when they are already up 3-0. When is Krillin going to get to show off his Zenyatta play for London Spitfire? Or is he just going to be permabenched throughout the season? Only time is going to tell, but I feel like that's definitely a player that isn't going to be stuck on the bench forever. And, having Badosian as, the person to basically be above you, where, you could take a lot of things in from, is a very good person to learn from overall. Permabench? Who knows? We've seen stranger things happen, like, someone speedrunning Path of Pro in 20 days. Never say never. That should be the motto of the Overwatch League. But anyways, I'm going to wrap up because I do not want to lose my voice entirely, just because this is a lot of talking since Slampost.net went out. So with that being said, guys, I'm going to close out the show for tonight. So if you guys want to help us out, one of the best things to do is to leave us a review over on iTunes. We're always looking for ways to improve the show to make for a better listening experience for you guys. So if you guys have any sort of feedback, if you guys want us to talk about anything in particular when it pertains to the Overwatch League, we are always open ears. You can submit topics, send us questions, all of that good stuff. If you would like to find additional Overwatch content, consider checking out Overwatch Recall. That is our hub of Overwatch, Overwatch League, Path to Pro, Fantasy Overwatch League podcasts. That is available on our website. We also have a Twitter at OW Recall for that. And then every Sunday night, we release a weekly recall, which caps off the episodic listen of all the Overwatch content out there. I know this past week we had like 28 podcasts releasing a new episode. And of course, some of those released multiple episodes. So there's really like 34 or 35 total episodes in the past week between the content creators. So fantastic stuff there. Check it out on our website. And if you guys would like to support us further, you would always check out our Patreon page. And we have tiers starting at just $1 a month. You can find more information at patreon.com/OWL network. So you too can join the likes of Blazing Bob, Brendan, and Gabby in helping our network grow further. So thank you guys again for all of your continued support. We greatly appreciate it. And we hope to see some additional things coming to our Patreon here very soon. So with that being said, if you guys would like to contact the show or our host, you can do so a number of different ways. You can email us at contact@owlnshow.com. You can visit our website at www.owlnshow.com. We're also on Twitter at @OWLNShow. You can check out our YouTube content at www.youtube.com/Overwatch League Network. And I have to say, if you guys have not seen our Baptiste video, check it out. You will not be disappointed. And Spider has been doing a lot of learning a lot of new tricks when it comes to video content, so he appreciates any support you can throw his way. So go check that out. We also stream live on Twitch 3 nights a week at twitch.tv/OWLN show. So we are a Twitch affiliate, so you can help support the show by subscribing to our channel and earn our network emoticon. We record podcasts 3 nights a week, so we have Overwatch League Network. That is a podcast you are currently listening to that airs Mondays at 7 p.m. Pacific time. We have OWL by the Numbers, which is our Fantasy Overwatch League podcast that airs Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Pacific time. And of course, we have our variety Overwatch show in Heroes Never Die, airing at Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Pacific time. And host streams, when available, are Thursday, Fridays at 7:30 PT, but, Overwatch League is happening. And I'm losing my voice. So again, check out our Patreon, patreon.com/OWLN network. And guys, if you want to contact us, this is way too much for one person. Slambo is on Twitter at SlamboForWatch. You can find Spider at SpiderGD. And as for myself, you can find me at TimidlyDrunkCTR. So with that being said, guys, thank you so much again for hanging out with me tonight on Overwatch League Network. This has been episode number 75. I've been your host, Timidly Drunk, joined at times by Slambo, who's currently in the video abyss due to someone crashing. It's all good, man. And we hope to see you guys back tomorrow night for our next episode of OWL by the Numbers. And if not, then we'll see you back next week, guys. Have a good night.